Hey everyone, today we're going to be removing the deck, swapping the blades, and reinstalling the deck on this Craftsman T110 riding lawnmower. Over time, rocks and sand are just going to wear down the blade and it's going to need to be sharpened, and that needs to be removed to do so. So we're going to jump right into it. Before I get started, however, I do want to make sure that the mower is in park, so pushing down the brake, I'm able to push all the way down into park and then let go of the brake, holding it in position and verifying it's engaged. Make sure that key is nowhere near the ignition. We'll bring it inside. And if you wish, disconnect the battery for added safety. Remembering what the current deck height position is, -3, I'm going to bring it all the way down to the lowest point. The first order of business will be the removal of this belt keeper rod. We see this red rod here. It is secured on this side by a screw. The other side is held by a through-hole fitting. I'll take a moment to mark that hole with a piece of tape so it goes through the same hole on reassembly. Using a socket and an extension, I'll remove that self-tapping screw now. And place it off to the side. The bracket is then pulled from the far hole where it drops and is removed from the tractor. The belt can then be gently lowered off the pulley as there's enough slack to easily take it off. I'll pull it back and rest it on this piece so it doesn't tangle on anything. We'll continue with the removal of the bow tie pin on this linkage right over here. Using a pair of pliers, I just pull up and away to release it. With it released, I can now pull through the entire deck support rod, and it hangs right here. Making my way to the other side of the cutting deck, I do the exact same thing. Pulling the other rod through, the back of the deck now collapses to the ground. With that done, I now bring the adjuster all the way to the top position, just to get it out of the way. In the next step, we'll be separating this front linkage here. Another bow tie clip to remove, and this one ended up in the middle of the driveway. Pushing the stabilizer rod through, the whole deck is now completely on the ground. I do not want to rotate that rod or adjust it in any way. I did find the clip a short time later and put it off to the side. Next, we'll remove what they call the PTO cable, or the blade engagement cable. We could see that there are multiple connections to remove on this one. This started with the removal of that bow tie clip right over here. And then pulling back slightly against the spring tension, I was able to remove this from its seat. Lay it down here on the deck. I'll make my way to the spring now, where I'm able to turn it upward and get it out of that notch. There's not a lot of clearance, but there is enough to remove the spring. It's just not easy to do while you're holding a camera, but we can see the spring came out of the notch. So we'll carefully draw it back away from the deck and just push it between the rear wheels. I'm taking a moment to lift these pieces up and then take that rod and just slide it through temporarily to hold them up and out of the way. I'll do the same thing on the other side, and that'll just make removing the deck in a bit easier as they don't hang down. I conduct a quick inspection of what I've done, and what I see is that the deck is connected to nothing on this mower anymore, and it is safe to remove. So I'm going to slide it right out of the side, getting it completely out of the way from the rest of the tractor so I can work on it. We begin our work on the deck by conducting an initial visual inspection. Then I'll carefully flip it on its side and then over so we can have a look at the bottom. I'll point out that I was testing this blade holder here before this video. I'll provide more information on it as we continue our video. We're definitely looking at a worn blade here. We could see chips from rocks as well that have hit it over time. It's just time to replace or sharpen blades when they look like this. Here's the other side. Once they get dull, it becomes really inefficient and they start tearing your grass instead of cutting your grass. So maintaining sharp and balanced blades is always a good idea, not only for efficiency, but for the health of your lawn. We'll note the old blades are marked bottom pointed down. Model number can be found on the blade as well. And one single nut in the center secures this blade. And while the book recommends a wooden block to loosen the blade, we're going to be using this blade holder to conduct our project today. Disassembly will be done with a pneumatic tool, so I fire up the air compressor. And you would believe, looking at the blade side of the blade, you would know which direction this spins. It would turn that way, so the nut would run contrary to it, but it doesn't. The nut is, in fact, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. It is not reverse thread. I would only recommend pneumatic for this. That made quick work of removing this nut. I can now remove the blade holder because we're going to have to put it on the next blade shortly. So I unscrew it, and I'm loosening the slack until I'm able to flex it, but then I realize that the blade isn't even connected. All I gotta do is lift the blade off and I'm done. Take this right off and make my way to the other side where I'll install it for this blade. I really want to make sure it's tightened down tightly. I don't need this blade spinning on me if that thing flies off while I got the pneumatic tool in hand. But here we go. No problem at all. We'll get this blade out now. I'll pull this blade out and put it off to the side, but I am going to leave the blade holder here because I'm going to need it in a few minutes. Before anything, I want to take the opportunity to clean up some of this impacted dirt and grass with a nylon brush. I won't be spending the next several minutes on video brushing dirt. I think everybody gets the point. Depending on how impacted your stuff is, what type of tool you would use to remove all that dirt is your own prerogative. After I'm satisfied, however, I'll go and take my leaf blower and blow all this stuff out of here so we can take a look and see if there's more cleaning to be done. And there is, and it's important to do so because you don't get the opportunity to do this often. Also, I made sure to clean these castings around the bearings here because they help to cool the bearing, but only if the surface area is free of debris. In this video, we're going to be swapping out blades for new blades, not sharpening them. I realize only now I got the wrong type of blade. As we see with the fitting, it's not the star fitting, so I need to go back to the store and exchange these. Now I've come back and I've got the correct blade. However, this one that I have is a mulching blade. We can see it's slightly different and slightly more expensive. Maybe they put a cheaper blade on the tractor when you buy it to keep the cost down. It is, however, the correct blade for this 42-inch deck. And it no longer says bottom, it now says grass side, so clearly there was some miscommunication previously. For those interested in sharpening the blades, I have a separate video that goes into the conventional sharpening with a file, as well as some aftermarket appliances used to sharpen the mower blades. We'll look at the positives and negatives, also getting into the critical step of balancing the blades, which presents a challenge on Craftsman using a nail, so we're going to try out some aftermarket items to do so. If you're interested, click the link in the top right corner. Inserting the blade with grass side showing, it sits right in those detents, where I then place the nut back on, securing it down by hand to ensure that it stays in the detents till all the slack is gone. Again, observing grass side down, place the blade back on into the detent, but also in the blade holder on this side, securing it with the nut by hand, removing all the slack. We can see the blade holder installed holds it captive, and it does clear the other blade. They do not touch. We can see that the blades are pointed towards each other. There's adequate clearance here between this blade and this one right here. We'll begin torquing the one here on the blade holder now. This calls for 70 to 90 foot-pounds. I've set my torque wrench to 80. We'll be using our 5/16 socket. This is not the way to torque it while it's on the ground. The reason is you can't get any leverage on the deck at 80 foot-pounds. That's a substantial amount of weight is enough to spin that deck. Instead, I've just lifted the deck up sideways, and now I'm going to torque it down, and the deck should be able to support itself with that torque wrench to our desired weight. Checking twice for dramatic video effect, but only one click is necessary. I'll remove the blade holder from this side now so it can be moved over to the other side. Again, making sure I lock that screw down good, checking it after I do so, that it's going to secure the blade tightly. Pull the deck back up onto its side so that I can begin my torquing procedure, and we'll torque down this nut. That's it. I'll take off the blade holder so we can move on to the next step. If you're interested in this blade holder, I'll post a link down in the comments section below. We're done working under the deck now, so we're going to flip it back over right side up. And I just want to take a couple of minutes to clean these areas. I have the opportunity to do so before I put everything back together. Now rolling the tractor back out into position for installation. I come right here to the end of the garage, put my parking brake back on, and slide the deck into the approximate position back under the tractor. It won't be perfect, I'm going for close enough. Looking from under, I get a good idea of where I should be, centered. I did, however, bring it back slightly further than it needs to be, only to make the installation of this spring easier, owing to the lack of tension. Now I'll put the plastic fitting for the cable back into that metal holder by pulling back on the spring so it seats in. And using the smaller of the bow tie clips, I will now place it across the front of that plastic piece, securing the plastic portion back into the metal fixture. Rechecking everything to make sure it fits properly, and that would complete the installation of the blade engagement cable. Next, I'll be installing the stabilizer rod on the front of the deck. And as I pull it up, we'll see that it doesn't meet the deck. Being careful not to turn and adjust that rod, I'll move the deck to accommodate the rod so we don't knock it out of adjustment. After a couple tries, I should be able to get it right up center to that hole and push it through. I'll then place a bow tie clip through to secure that rod. I temporarily held these deck support rods up, which I'll now push back through so they hang. Other side as well. At which point I'll start pulling the rear of the deck into position. At this point it looks pretty closely lined up for what I need to do next. I lower the setting now all the way to the lowest position, and found that the holes didn't line up perfectly because of the unevenness of the ground, so I just shimmed the front ever so slightly, allowing the holes to line up, seeing as it was shimmed, raising it into position. It did take a couple of tries to get it right, but now we see I get the rod through this support bracket, and then through our deck by lifting the deck up slightly, and everything's connected. So I'll place my bow tie clip through, give it a check, and move on to the other side. Again, with everything in almost perfect position, I get the rod through that bracket first, and once it's in that bracket, I'm then going to lift the deck slightly to get it into the position I need that the rod goes through. Just like that, and it's in. Obviously, the deck doesn't sit on the ground, it floats, so you're going to need some sort of shim up front to rock this back and forth to get it in the right position. Everything's aligned now, so I'm just going to place the belt right back over the pulley. It has substantial slack, so there's no problem at all. And that's it. Remembering the hole on the other side that I've marked with tape, I'll place the far side of the belt keeper rod back through that hole, negotiating it through all these pieces. Once secured into the hole, I'll set it up straight, aligning the other side for the self-tapping screw, which I've already set up on this socket, turning it in by hand just to get everything started. I'll then finish off with the ratchet, snugging the screw down. Checking everything and make sure it's seated properly, concluding the work portion of this event. Remove my shim, which is really just a tire chalk, and I'm going to run through the mechanicals, pulling it all the way up to the top, all the way back down, observing that there's no binding, everything is working properly. Then I'll take my way over to the engagement handle. I'll pull it down to engage and up to disengage, and that seems fine as well. If there's a problem, now's the time to catch it. I go further and observe these actions from under the tractor while I do this to make sure that everything is working properly. There's no reason not to check this stuff before you have a motor with spinning blades spinning around just below your feet. And everything here seems to be looking good. If the battery was disconnected for this job, at this point it could be safely reconnected. I also brought my key back out so I don't lose it in the kitchen. The deck height will now be set to whatever height it was before I started working on it, and that is 3. At this point, we're ready for testing. I'll give it a minute to warm up before we do any test. Making my way out to a location away from the garage where mechanical failure won't cause any serious or costly damage. We'll begin. Without the blades running, I don't hear any strange mechanical noises, so we'll continue. So now I'll engage the blades. Everything seems to be running smooth. It sounds smooth. I don't see any vibration here. Again, I'll reiterate, you should only use balanced blades on these installations. Always balance your blades every time you remove them. And that's it. And that concludes this video on this deck removal, blade swap out, and deck reinstallation on this Craftsman T110 riding lawnmower. I hope you found this video enjoyable, entertaining, and informative. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below, helps me out a lot when you do, and hit that subscribe button for more videos like this when they come out. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?